Hello there everybody, my name is Darshan Govender and welcome to ByteFusion. For today, I will be introducing you guys to C++. In order to use C++, you need an IDE, Integrated Development Environment. The environment that I have chosen to use is Visual Studio. So I'll go into Visual Studio. Okay, if you have Visual Studio open, you'll see that there's some options to choose from. Make sure you choose the option that says Create a New Project. These three banners must have C++ as your programming language, Windows, console, and make sure you click on empty projects. Go next. Make sure you name your file. I'm going to name mine test2. And now I'm going to choose a location for my project. So I've decided to put it in the folder called introduction, and I'm going to select this folder. All right. Then once you've done, just click create. And we have Visual Studio open. Okay, now as you can see, there's no file for us to code. So in order to get that class that we want, go to your Directives, where where your project panel is. Right click on your project, not the one that says the solution, the one right below that. Click on add, click on new item. Make sure that your item is selected as a C++ file, and make sure you name your item without taking out .cpp. I'm going to call mine main. Okay, and here we have it. For the first project that you guys want to do, you always want to hash include IO string. So you just type hash include. All right, and next you want to say use a namespace std. All right, and in order to begin your application or whatever you're creating, make sure that you create a method called main. So first you specify the return type. Our return type that we're specifying is an integer, and our method name is called main. Open the brackets, open curly brackets, press enter, and here you have your first ever method. Right. Next, you want to return, because your integer type, your data type that you're returning is an integer, you want to end off by returning any sort of integer value. I'm going to return 0. Okay. Now, I want to explain why we have hash include and use the namespace std. Hash include basically includes the library that you want to use, and we want to use the IO stream. The reason why we want to use the IO stream is because we're going to be using signatures like cout and cin. And cout and cin are standard signatures. So that's why we have this line saying use namespace std. So instead of us having to do this name scope where we can say cout standard .cout, this would instead of doing this all the time, because this is very common in C++, all we do specify is that the namespace, we say use the namespace std, and that automatically assumes that it's all standard. All right. Okay, for our first program, we're going to do Sup Programmers. So in order to do that, simply type in cout, make sure that you point in, the arrows are pointing out, so the arrows are pointing to the left. And then you open your quotation marks. Inside your quotation, you contain a string. Our string is going to be Sup Programmers. You can add an exclamation mark there. Put in more arrows and make sure you end the line. Okay. So now if I save this and I print it to the console, as you can see, we have the line Sup Programmers printed, and because we said end line, it's made a space over here as we present. Now, what if you want to print a string, if you want to print a collection of strings? So to do that, we'll simply say sup, and now we'll print another string saying programmers. add exclamation mark, add a space here because we want there to be a space between programmers and that. We save this, we run it. As you can see, it prints the exact same thing. The only difference is we've separated it into two separate strings. And this becomes very handy when you're printing out lots of data and like collections of data. So that's good. Okay. Another instance that we might run into is, what if we want the user to input something through the console and we want that to display? So in order to do that, you first create your variable that your container variable that you're going to use, and we're going to use a string container, and we can say that the variable name is x, for instance. Then we say cin, and now we point, and now instead of pointing to the left, we point to the right using our arrow keys, and we say x. All right. And to make it a bit more neat, we'll do something at the beginning. We'll put a statement there asking the user to input. So we'll say enter your first name. All right. I'll put a space here because I want there to be a space when I look in the console. Okay. And then make sure you always end. Make sure that every time you program, make sure that you always end in a semicolon. Any statement that you have, any direct statement, make sure you end in a semicolon. Unless you're using control flow, but control flow is for another day. All right. Now I just save this. I go to this. Oh, you'll also notice here that I haven't used end line. That's because once you press enter in the console, it already automatically takes you to the next line. So I'll type my first name as Darshan. And there it says Sup Programmers, and the reason why it doesn't say Sup Darshan is because I forgot to add that in. Okay, so just make sure that you have your variable name there. The good thing about cout is that you can put an integer, you can put a double, it automatically converts it to a string. So yeah, so let's run this. Okay, I'll type my name again. And then you can see it says Sup Darshan, and that works really well. Now, what if you want to print out an integer and not a string? So for instance, we'll say enter your age. Make sure that you declare your container as an integer, and that the container name can be anything. We'll use x again since it's already there. Okay, so we save this, we run this, we enter our age, 20, 21, 22, whatever your age is, sup 21. All right, that's not exactly what we want to say. We'll say your age is, okay. Now if we run this, your age is 21. Okay, that's good. It's working really well. Okay, now what if we want to increment that age, or we want to decrement that age? There's a special type of way to increment and decrement in C++. It's also common in a few other languages. It's simply, if you want to increment or decrement just by one, all you have to do is say x plus plus, and that should increment it by 1. So now if I run this, if I put 21 as my age, it should print 22. Okay, as you can see, it says your age is 22. Okay, so now that's one way to increment, but what if you want to decrement? What if you want to go down an integer? Then instead of saying plus plus, we use the alternative minus minus. We save it, we run it. If we enter our age is 21 and we press enter, it'll say your age is 20. Okay. And that's basically how decrement and incrementing works. Now, there's a few shortcuts that become really handy in C++. The first shortcut is an auto-completing signature shortcut. So say, for instance, you want to type in cout, but you want to do it really fast. Then all you do is you press Control space, and it comes up with all these options. And like you can see in there, you can see CN appears there. You can just press enter. So it sort of finds the signature for you, and then you can find it on that in that list. You can find the signature and you can just press enter and it'll automatically put it in for you. Okay, but this isn't supposed to be CN, it's supposed to be cout. So we'll erase that. Shift space, cout. Okay, not count, cout. Okay. Another useful shortcut is a shortcut for duplicating and pasting highlighted areas. So if we highlight this area here and we press Ctrl D, it duplicates it, as you can see, and it pastes it. The alternative to that, if you want to remove the line, so you highlight all of it, make sure that you highlight onto the next line like I'm doing here, then press Ctrl L and it removes it. Okay. And lastly, a very, very convenient shortcut to reformat your code and make sure it's all neat and nice. So like, say for instance, you have some indentation here, you have some indentation here, you have some indentation here, and you don't like all this indentation and it looks untidy. Then all you do is you simply press Ctrl KD. Okay, it hasn't done it for main because it probably doesn't recognize it. But for the code that's here, if you saw carefully, what it did was it aligned it nicely to the side, and that sort of formats your code in a neat way. And I can promise you guys that that shortcut's going to become your most useful shortcut in in your whole programming. Whatever you do in your programming in C++, that's going to be your main shortcut most of the time. So yeah, that's how you use that. Okay, and now we'll go through some special functions that you can use when printing out a string using cout. So for now, we'll take out. We'll comment out. We'll comment out what we're not using. Before I continue, I would just like to recap the following things that we'll be going through in this course. We'll be going through the following things. We'll be going through directives, subprogrammers, shortcut keys, printing, comments, and basic tips. Okay. And back to C++. Okay, so now special functions that you can use are the following functions. I'll comment them on the side here. \n, \t, and \quotation. Those are the basic ones that you'll be using. So what if you need to go to the next line, but you don't want to use endline? Then all you do is you take out endline, and instead of having to like print endline, you can just say \n. So let's make this a bit complicated. Let's say you want to print your age, right? 21 on the next line. Straight after you say your age is, you want to print 21 in the next line. Then you use \n. So if we save this and we run, you'll see that your age is on a separate line and 21 is on a separate line. Okay, that's good. Okay, the next type of function for printing is \t. What that does is it neatly formats a certain amount of decimal spaces. So if we just, all right. So say we have like a number of strings. Okay, I'm not gonna do each string separately. I'm gonna put it into one quotation. So say we want to print A, B, C, D, E. Just pretend that each letter here is like some sort of string, and you want to print it neatly out, right? Then all you're going to do here, you say \t between each one, and that will create the amount of decimal spaces you can have. \t. Make sure you save, and then I don't know why n is there. \n. All right, save it. Run. And then you can see it actually creates 5 tab spaces. So, and it neatly prints it out. So if this was a string and that was a string and that was a string, and you wanted to print like an array or list or something, this would be very, very useful. Okay. And lastly, the \quotation. Now, how \quotation works is that if you want to print out If you want to say, for instance, Sam said, and you want to enclose what he says in quotation marks, and you'll say, hello. Okay, let's use our what we used in the beginning, Sup Programmers, right? You want it to be like that. You can see that C++ already has a use for these quotations, and that's to encase a string. But so when we want to actually print out that quotation mark, it's going to end up cutting out this bit here, and now we don't want that to happen. So in order to avoid that, we have our backslash, which comes to the rescue. Once again, we just type in backslash quotation. Why is this? Backslash quotation. There we are. Make sure you save, you run it. There you can see it prints out Sam said Sup Program, and it has those quotation marks there. So that's how that works, and that becomes very useful for like printing out lots of information, especially when you want the quotation marks. Okay. All right. Before I continue, there's one thing I forgot to mention to you guys, and that's how you save your classes that you create. So one way to save is to press this thing here. So say I do that, right? And now you can see here in C++ it highlights it yellow or brighter yellow, and this is like a dark yellow. So any location where there's like a bright yellow, it's even over here on the side. That means that that area has not been saved. So in order to save one class, we simply press the save here. But what if, for instance, you had many classes, like you didn't just have main CPP, you had like source CPP and some other CPPs, then you would click this save over here, and this save saves every single class. It saves everything, and that becomes very useful. Make sure that whenever you program, you always save your work. All right. Right. So now we want to get to a bit more complicated things, and by complicated I mean more printing. Okay, so now we know that when we do cin, it allows us to print. It captures the first word in the command in the console, and it prints that word. But what if we want to print two words? Like what if you want to say cout? We'll uncheck these now. Enter your name, right? Your full name. Enter your full name. And what if we want to print out the full name? Let's say sup. Okay. What if we want to print the full name? Let's try it out. Okay, if I type my full name, Darshan Governor, you'll see that it only takes the very first word that comes up on the console. It doesn't capture the whole thing. Now, there's a good way to work around this, and it's a special type of method. It's called Getline. And in order to use Getline, we need to include a directory called string. So we say #include a string. All right. And how Getline works is you simply take out the part that says cin. You say Getline. Now make sure the first thing you put in the brackets is cin, and the next thing you put is your string. So x, for instance. And don't forget to add your semicolon. Remember your semicolons, guys. Okay. So now if I type my full name, Darshan Governor, and I print, you'll see it says Sup Darshan Governor. Okay, so that's how that works. Right. Next, we want to go into a bit more advanced printing. There's a special way for printing, and it's a type of print that allows you to format your outputs. And say if you want to like create a few decimal spaces or you want to round off, there's a special type of printing, and it's called Printf. To use Printf, we include a header file. We include a header class called studio.h. Okay. And to begin this, we'll start off basic. I'll just comment all of this out. We don't need this. We'll say Okay, the first type of printf that we want to do is a double print. We want to print a double and we want it to be formatted. So in order to create a double variable, you simply type double. You specify your container name. We'll say D, for instance. Go on to the next line, and on the same line you can assign a value to D. So we'll use some sort of value like 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. All right. Next, we want to print it out. So we'll say printf, open our brackets. Don't forget your semicolons, guys. It's really important. It's the most common mistake that programmers make these days. Just don't forget it. Okay. And in order to specify our type of format that we want to print in, we open the quotation marks. All right. Inside the quotation marks, we'll say percentage. We'll start off with a percentage sign. We'll say 10.2f. All right, and \n because we want to go to the next line. Make sure that it's a \n and not a /n. Comma D. All right. Now what the special type of function is going to do is it's going to reserve 10 spaces for this this variable right here. 10 spaces. Right now this has about 9. If you count it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, sorry, there's 8. There's about 8 here. And we want to do 10. So it's going to create 10 spaces. So from the beginning of the very left, the alignment from left to right is going to be 10 spaces. And we're rounding off to 2 decimal places. So that's going to be these 2 places here. So 6 is going to change to a 7. Okay, now let's run this and see what happens. Okay, as you can see, we have 10 spaces here, and it's rounded off 5, 7. Okay, and that's how basically you do it for a double. But what if we don't want to use a double? What if we want to use, say, an integer, like int 505, for instance? Then simply say printf, open your brackets, add in your quotations for your formatting, percentage, and we can say something like 15D. Remember, the 15 here is creating decimal spaces, all right? And we want to have int y equal to 505. We want y to be here, and we want to enclose that. Okay, so now if we save this and we print it, okay, don't forget to add a new line, \n. If we save, go ahead and print. There you'll see it created 15 spaces here, 15 spaces, and it knows that 505 is a decimal, so it prints it as a decimal. It's not a decimal. It's not a decimal. It's an integer. That's what the D stands for. All right. Now, what if we want to, like, for instance, we want to show that it has it's a positive 15 or positive 505. Then we just put a plus here. We save it. We run it. You'll see it puts a plus in front of 505. If you wanted it to be a negative integer, you don't have to add a negative here. You can just add it when you declare it in integer. You save. You run. And then it prints as negative 505. Okay. Right. And finally, the last way to format and print out neatly is use something called %s. Now, you'll notice that printf, if we have some sort of string, right, like string name equal to dash, and we try to print out this string, printf %s \n comma name. If we try to run this now, you'll see it doesn't print. I don't know what this is, but it doesn't really print out because printf doesn't recognize a string. But however, it does recognize something else that's very useful, and it's basically a character of Chars. So if we create a character of Chars, it should recognize it. So in order to do that, we specify a character, char. We specify the name of the container, and we specify the number of characters that we can contain. So we want to contain 20 characters, and we'd specify what we want to contain in double quotations. Like I want to contain my name, so I'll say Darshan, and then that should work. And now if I print out this character called name, if I try to print this out, save, print, you'll see it actually prints my name out, so that's good. All right. And now let's try to test something out here. Let's try to do something a bit more sketchy here. Let's say print. Okay, let's change int here to 21. Okay, I'll tell you why we're changing it to 21 just now. Printf. Hello, percentage s. You are percentage d. Percentage d years old. \n. Okay, so in order to print out more than one variable, you got to specify it like this. So wherever it has a percentage, that marks the first position. So the first percentage s, requires us to enter a string or a character, and a string of characters, right? And that's going to be our name. And now secondly, you want to input an integer, all right? And that's going to be y, because we specified y as 21. Okay, so if I save this and I run this, it should print this out. Never forget your semicolons, all right? Okay, let's continue. So if we run this, okay, there you can see, hello Darshan, you are 21 years old. Okay, now what if we want our name to be what if we want our name to be like a few spaces away from a certain position? Like say for instance, we have this gap here, right? This space. Straight after the space, we want a few more spaces. Like well, we can specify that as 5s, and that reserves 5 spaces, aligning it from left to right. So if I save this and I run this, you should see that it aligns it from left to right 5 spaces. Okay, my name is pretty big, so we gotta have more than 5 spaces. So we gotta have something like 8 spaces. There you can see that it reserves 8 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. And the opposite way to align it from right to left, you simply type in -8s. And that should move it away from the comma. Because you can see that's where it starts. It starts at the comma and it goes left. Okay, we seem to be getting an error. So we'll just save this, run it. Okay, there you can see. So 8 spaces to the left, aligned from right to left. Okay, and that's basically that. All right, and before we end off, I just want to mention something to you guys. In order to comment in C++, whenever you program or you create some application or class, you want to always make sure that you label whatever you do, so that you can come back to your code and you don't get confused and it's easier to read. So in order to do that, we use comments, and you should comment in the following ways. Number one, you should comment all your global variables. Your global variables, those are all the variables that appear not inside the class, outside the class. And you should comment all your methods, specifying what the method does, what it returns. So if we had something like public int v, right? And say v was something like, v was your weight, like, you'll say stores the amount of weights, stores the amount of weights per person. All right, stores the amount of weight for one person, right? That's something that you would comment. And in order to, this is the simplest way to comment. You simply do a // and it allows you to comment. Now, if we had a method like int LCM, lowest common multiple, of course, int W, int V. And we wanted to explain what the method does. Then what we do is we want to explain it in paragraphs. Then we open up, we do a double star. We go to the next line, create another star. And now you'll see this allows you to print paragraphs. So we'll say this method obtains the highest. This method contains the lowest common multiple between two integers and returns the number. Okay, you'd have something like that. Okay, and that's basically how comments works. And always make sure you save your work. And yeah, that's about it. Alright guys, that's all you need to know for C++. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe, leave a like if you like this video. And yeah, that's this is Darshan Govender, and this is ByteFusion signing out. Have a good day. Remember to always be consistent and persistent when you program. Okay, goodbye for now.